I mean, marriage was already doing quite poorly in the 1980s and 1990s. As that has gone up, meaning the increase of two-parent working households, the divorce rate has also gone up. The number of people getting married has also gone down during that time period. We fall in love super fast, and we fall out of love very slowly and then all at once. If my romantic partner came home and said to me, I saw 4 guys I really wanted to have sex with today, but we've got that rule. I adhered to our contract. I would not feel good. I would not be like, good job, thank you for, I'd say, oh, well, don't do me any favors. Like, good Lord.
Hey guys, it's Jackson Buhai here with TMZ, coming at you with a little bit of a different video today. Today I'm joined by James Sexton. He is a New York-based divorce attorney. He is also an author and relationship expert.
It's good to see you, Jackson. I appreciate you having me.
Of course. Look, I want to come right out of the gate and ask you something because look, I'm 22 years old and I look around at a lot of older couples and, you know, some are very happy, some are not. And something that I'm constantly wondering is there such a thing as a happy 25-year-long marriage? Does it exist?
Yeah. You know, I always tell people that I think marriage is a bit like the lottery. You're probably not going to win. Statistically, the odds are against you. But if you win, what you win is so great that it's probably worth buying a ticket and giving it a shot. You know, like the majority of marriages will end in divorce or separation, or a couple that just stays together for reasons other than the fact that they see each other as a source of happiness. So, you know, again, there's a lot of arguments over what the accurate statistic would be, but somewhere in the range of conservatively 45 to 55% of marriages end in divorce. That's a catastrophic failure. And then you've got another 10 to 15% that separate but don't formally divorce. So they live apart from each other, they have a separation agreement, but they never, or they just go out for milk and never come back, but they don't formalize a divorce. Sometimes for religious reasons, sometimes just because they don't feel like doing the paperwork. And then there's another like 10 to 15% of people that remain married, don't physically separate, but report that they don't really even like their spouse anymore, that they don't enjoy their company, that they don't feel that their spouse adds any value to their life. So those are bad numbers. And so if I was a 22-year-old young man like you, I would be cautious and skeptical about marriage. I would even be cautious and skeptical about long-term monogamous relationships because, you know, this is a relationship structure that was created when people generally died at a fairly young age. You know, it was before germ theory. It was predating things like surgery. Like the concept of marriage has been around a really, really long time, much longer than most of modernity. So, you know, you have to wonder, is till death do us part? Well, when that meant your 30s, it was different than when you meant your 80s or 90s, right? So the question of can you sustain long-term connection and happiness, statistically, the odds are against you. But if you talk to people, and most people know a lot of unhappily married people or unhappily coupled people, but most people also know 1 or 2 very happy married people or very happy long-term relationship people. And I have to tell you, as someone who knows a couple of those people, their lives by almost every metric are better. They're just better. They're happier. They are thriving in their life very often. So again, it begs the question that just because there's a significant degree of risk that something will be unsuccessful, does it mean you shouldn't try it? And I, especially when I'm talking to a man as young as yourself, I would never say anything to you other than be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid. Like your life should be a bold life. And I hope you don't die without any scars. Because if you die without any scars, it means you've lived a very, very safe life. And, you know, there's an old saying that ships are safe when they're, you know, at the shore. But that's not what ships are for. Like what ships are for is for sailing. So your life, your body, your trajectory, your time, your efforts, they are meant to make mistakes, to feel pain. I will tell you as a man in his 50s, whenever I talk to a young person like you in your 20s, and I have 2 sons, you know, similar in age to you, I would tell them, like, some of the greatest gifts of my life were born of pain, sadness, difficulty. When they were happening, I remember thinking the world is ending. And just when the caterpillar thinks the world is ending, it turns into a butterfly. So I would say to you, a long answer to a short question, that yeah, I do know some couples that have been together for longer than 25 years and are still blissfully happy. They're the minority. And I really, really hope that the fact that they're a minority doesn't scare you or anyone away from taking shots on goal and giving it a try.
Quite the philosophical answer from you, but also one that's rooted in some science. It seems like what you're intimating is this rising pattern we're seeing in divorces and separations is kind of a byproduct of evolutionary biology. And I'm wondering, do you think that social media, along with our increased lifespan, has started to play a role in that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think social media is having a dramatic impact on the organism that is the human mind, right? And is the way we perceive ourselves and each other. If comparison is, as they've called it, the thief of joy, we have more opportunities for comparison than ever. The comparisons are being shoved down our throat. They're being curated by an algorithm that does not care about us, but wants our attention. It wants to colonize every single minute of our attention if possible. And the way it does that is by enamoring us or offending us. Enragement, engagement, or, stimulating our drives are really the way to keep us engaged and to keep us tuned in and to keep our attention, which really the attention economy is what runs things now. So I think that's having a profound impact on the way we perceive ourselves and our own success and the way we perceive the success of our relationship relative to other relationships. There was a time where we would watch a movie, and we would say, oh, I'm happy, but I'm not as happy as in The Notebook, or I'm not as enamored as in Titanic, or my age is showing the movies I'm picking. But now we even then we knew, like, well, those are movies, right? Those are movies. It's not real. Like, like that's not, what we know, that that's entertainment. And it's like watching porn and being like, oh, that's not what real sex is like. That's what stylized sex is like between two people that are professionals at making sex visually stimulating. So there's a part of us that wants suspension of disbelief, but we know, like, people can't get hit like they get hit in Batman and stand up after. And it's kind of what makes it entertaining. When you're watching social media, your brain really believes that's real. Like, they really believes that, oh yeah, these people are as happy as they are because they're civilians. They're not actors. They're not paid. I mean, some of them are paid, right? But they're not paid actors. They're paid influencers. They're showing you their greatest hits while you live your gag reel. And by the way, when are you on your phone watching social media? Is it when you're having a wonderful time out with a young woman, or you're having some peak experience with friends? No, you're sitting on the toilet, you're sitting on the subway, you're sitting in traffic in the back of an Uber or whatever it might be. You're kind of living a boring moment, and you're looking at everyone else's curated amazing moments. How would you not think that your day-to-day life does not stack up compared to that?
Interesting. It seems like you're saying social media can play a detrimental role in marriages and subsequently lead to divorce.
Well, I think it's impacting all of our relationships, and marriage is just a form of relationship that has a certain rule set attached to it.
Playing off that, then, I have an interesting question for you. If, social media is having this huge impact on our brains and our relationships and the way that humans interact with each other, what do you think of, let's say, a couple in their 20s decides to get married? Would you advise them to put a social media clause in a prenuptial agreement that determines joint ownership of social media accounts, what you can and can't post on certain accounts, things that are yeses, things that are no-goes? What do you think about that?
I got to tell you, the first person to propose the idea to me, and I do a ton of prenups, it's an intriguing idea. I will tell you, there are clauses people propose for prenuptial agreements that the lawyer in me says that's a terrible idea. But the relationship analyst in me and media person in me, media commentator on relationships in me, goes, but boy, that's an interesting discussion. Like, that would be an interesting discussion for a couple to have. Like, one of the best things I think about a prenup is the conversations the couple has to have when they're discussing a prenup. Because you have to talk about, what are we afraid of? And what do we owe each other? And what rules make sense in this relationship? And what are things we just have to trust each other on? And what are things that we can build up some defenses for, right? Like people often try to say, let's put infidelity clauses in. If you cheat, there's a penalty. Well, the penalty has to be financial. So how much is it worth? How much is it worth for me to cheat? I mean, I might be willing to, if it's only like 5 grand, like I've met some women that I'm like, yeah, it'd probably be worth 5 grand. Having to pay 5 grand to my spouse to sleep with that person. So you'd have to really come up with some persuasive, and by the way, is like a kiss as cheating the same penalty as having sex with someone? Because if you think about it, I mean, if it is, I might as well sleep with them then, because so you'd have to make progressive penalties for it to make any sense. Fundamentally, what you realize is that how you want your relationship to go? If I'll tell you right now, if my romantic partner came home and said to me, Jim, I saw 4 guys I really wanted to have sex with today. Like, but we've got that rule. So I honored the rule. I adhered to our contract. I would not feel good. I would not be like, good job. Thank you I'd say, oh, well, don't do me any favors. Like, good Lord, So I really think when you put in an infidelity clause, do you really want to believe that the reason why your partner's not sleeping with other people is because you've agreed on that in a contract? Or do you want it to be that, look, I stopped eating because I'm full. I'm not sleeping with other people because you satisfy me. Well, it's the same thing with social media. I think the question fundamentally is about our relationship with ourselves. It's not about like, oh, people can slide into my DMs, so it's dangerous to be on social media. That is true. People can slide into your DMs, but if you're in a happy relationship, you don't care how many people slide into your. Do you think if I roll into Margot Robbie's DMs, she's going to be like, oh my goodness, I have an option, like it. These people know that they have options. Attractive people know they have options. So sliding into someone's DMs, really what it's about is, what's your relationship with yourself and your own satisfaction with your own life? That restlessness, that's the thing that's killer. So I think, I like the idea. I have to tell you, I like the idea of having a really honest conversation with each other about social media and our relationship to it in this relationship. Because I got to tell you, the point you raised that I really like is maybe we need to start treating social media as a third person in this relationship. What are you allowed to do with it? Like, are you allowed to send my friend pictures of you in a bikini? If you're not, why should you be allowed to post it publicly? Right? Because you're basically sending it to my friend anyway. Could I call your girlfriend and be like, you look hot in that outfit? Or can I, put a fire emoji on your friend's, public Instagram? Or can I send her a DM with a fire emoji in response to a photo? I think everybody can make their own rules of that, right? There can be some people that are going to say, oh, you're being playful, don't worry, but you can go out and flirt. Like I'm the kind of guy that if my woman wants to go out with her girlfriends and dress, provocatively and have guys buy her drinks and like, as long as she's not sleeping with somebody, she's not kissing somebody, as long as she's just having fun and playing single and flirting with boy, what do I care? What do I care? You're coming home to me, you're with me, I don't care. You're not sleeping with these people. So I don't have a problem with that. Some men would. That's okay. I respect that. Like we're all allowed in relationship to make our own rules. It's why I like prenups to begin with, because I think your relationship, your rules. But social media is one of those things I think you're right. We need to start talking about it like it was a person in our relationship. And how are we going to relate to it? And is it going to be different than when we were single?
Now, look, this social media issue is a very Gen Z coded issue, I think, because we are the first generation to grow up knowing nothing else but the internet, knowing nothing else but social media. And earlier you mentioned a couple movies. You could sit down and watch The Notebook, you could sit down and watch Titanic, and you could be enamored. What my generation is dealing with is Love Island. That's what we have.
Yeah. God help you.
Exactly. What is your opinion on Love Island? Do you think that a show like Love Island could inadvertently encourage infidelity within not even a marriage, but even just a regular relationship?
Well, let me say a couple things. So one, I think Love Island could have that effect in that it shows people the excitement of novelty, right? But I also think most seasons of Love Island and similar shows you actually see these people like drive themselves headfirst into a wall a lot of the time. Like they kind of take temptation or they take a turn and they kind of implode their own lives. So I think that seeing the wages of sin, seeing the wages of eating the piece of chocolate cake rather than the healthy chicken breast, I think you sort of get to see that. And there's something about that. Like there are a couple of seasons of Love Island where it's like a cautionary tale, where you go, man, do not, because like somebody's in a solid groove talking to somebody and then they hook up with the new person and they screw that thing up that was pretty good. And you kind of go, what were you going after that shiny object? So here's what I'll tell you. I really like shows like Love Island, The Bachelor, any of those kinds of like Temptation Island, any of those shows. And I'll tell you why. I think they give couples the ability to have conversations about their relationship without having conversations about their relationship. Like you can sit there with your romantic partner and comment on what the people on the screen are doing. And it's a very safe way to have a conversation about things you might be dealing with in your relationship without making the other person as defensive. So instead of saying, why are you so disrespectful to me sometimes around our friends? Which is going to make someone very defensive. You're watching this show and you see someone doing that to him and you go, God, why does she talk about him like that in front of the other people? It's so disrespectful. And it's a way to convey to your partner what you see as an issue in someone else's relationship. Or to say, oh, look at how he does A, B, and C. Isn't that, boy, that's really, I don't know, that's really romantic, how nice it is. Look at how she looks at him. And that's so lovely. It's a way to tell your partner what you like or admire in relationship. So I think it creates these occasions for couples to have safe conversation. I will tell you, I'm guilty of it. I've more than once watched those shows with my romantic partner and got into like, I don't want to say a fight, but like a pretty heavy discussion about like, well, why is he doing that? And she's like, well, maybe she feels disrespected by blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, why would she feel that way? And meanwhile, we're kind of talking about us, but we're doing it sort of out of the blast radius by talking about, I think it's one of the reasons why we're so fascinated with celebrity couples. They give us the ability to have these conversations in a safer way. And so I like anything that gets us talking to each other in an honest, candid way.
Love Island, social media, we're in a new age of dating right now. And I can't help, you tell me, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like within the last decade, there has been just an unignorable, if that is a word, rise of sugar baby, sugar daddy, sugar mommy, sugar baby relationships. Some of them even result in marriage. What's your opinion on that?
Well, here's what I'll say. I try to never yuck anybody's yum. As long as you're consenting adults and it doesn't scare the horses, I'm cool with it. So, I tend to take the attitude that there are more ways to find happiness than like a pure traditional model. I think there's a lot of arguments to be made for a pure traditional model of monogamy and marriage and things like that. But there's a lot of arguments, especially a young person like yourself, I think what makes young people in every generation so useful and important is that you guys go, yeah, but why do we do it that way? Right? But why don't we try this instead? Like, and that's something that young people really, really, I think, always bring to the party, and they always have. Like since the dawn of time, young people have been, because whoever discovered water, it wasn't a fish. Like the people that are new to the game go, why is that? Why did we do that again? And sometimes we, as the older generation, go, we do that because that's the way we do it, I guess. I don't know why we exactly do it like that. And then you guys are the ones going, yeah, because couldn't you just do it like this? And we're like, well, yeah, I guess, yeah, you probably could do it that way. So I think there's a lot of value in revisiting relationship types. What do I like about the sugar daddy, sugar baby, sugar mama, sugar boy, relationship? What I like about it is that there's an honesty to the economy of it. I think all relationships are an economy, and I get accused of being unromantic for saying that, but I don't think it's unromantic. I think that an economy is an exchange of value. How many apples is an apple worth? Well, that's stupid. One, right? One apple's worth one apple. How many apples is a pineapple worth? Okay, now we're having a conversation. Now we have an economy. It's harder to grow a pineapple. It takes longer. It's bigger. You could feed more people with it. Okay, so maybe 3 apples equals 1 pineapple. But no, I live in an area where there's lots of apples. Okay, so maybe apples aren't worth as much. So we'll say 10 apples to 1 pineapple. Okay, so that's an economy. So all the best relationships are an economy. We each bring something to the table, and ideally it's not the exact same things. Like, you want to bring some different things. I'm a really hard worker and good provider. You're really good at like comforting me at the end of the day and like helping me relax a bit and put things down. You're someone who's a little disorganized and all over the place, and I'm super organized. So you help me relax a little, and I help you get a little more organized in your thought. I like to stay home all the time. You like to go out. So I get you to stay home a little and calm down. You get me to go out a little bit. Polarity is fun. Like, it's fun. It's what makes relationships fun. Too much polarity, it's a source of tremendous, discord in relationships sometimes. So what I like about the idea of the sugar relationships is there's an honesty to the economy of it. Look, I represent a lot of very wealthy men who are married to very beautiful women who, my guy went to Harvard, became a partner at Goldman Sachs, and made hundreds of millions of dollars. She was born hot. That's kind of it, right? She still goes to the gym, takes good care of herself, does all the stuff that's required to upkeep someone who's wildly attractive. But look, one of them won the genetic lottery and the other one put in a huge amount of effort, and they end up in roughly the same place on the same yacht in Ibiza. So, is that unfair? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that it's an economy. I think each of those things brings different value to the table. And I've represented both sides of that equation. I've represented the person who brings the attractiveness and the sensuality to the table, and the person who brings the resources to the table. And I think as long as everyone's honest about what they're in the relationship for, I don't really see that as a problem. I don't think it's my place to say, what is a okay relationship or not. If two people find value in the economy of their relationship, again, unless it's something that's predatory in a harmful way. But most of the people that I know that are in those kinds of relationships, they have other relationship permutations available to them. Is the rise of the sugar relationship a function of, that there has always been a dynamic between the sexes of providing and protecting and attractiveness and sexuality as an economy? I think there's an element of that, and that I'm fine with. The part I'm a little skeptical of is I don't know if the increase in that kind of relationship is a function of the proliferation of social media and how we're able to be in touch with many more people now, right? And see the menu of options in much easier ways. We're interacting with a lot more people now online. I mean, the biggest dating site in the world is Instagram. Like, it's the biggest dating. It's constantly people are seeing other potential mates and communicating with them. So whether it's that or whether it's a function of the fact, because one of the concerns I have about the increase in the sugar dating thing is that I do think people around your age have been handed a pretty raw deal. Scott Galloway's written a lot about this, how, the boomer generation and even my generation, people in their 50s and 60s, we have a tremendous economic advantage, obviously, as a function of our age, but we also came up in a time where the cost of a home comparative to the average wage was much closer. Like, you guys are starting a race way behind where we started it. And we're going, what? I ran that race. And it's like, right, but we had a huge head start in that race to some degree. So I do think there's something potentially dangerous about young people who just don't have access to resources feeling like they have to resort to romantic relationships as a economic function, as opposed to being something that is genuinely motivated by desire and attraction to another person, compatibility with another person, and one of the traits you find attractive being that this person's a good provider or that this person's, successful.
I'm glad you bring up the economies within relationships. With regards to gender roles, do you happen to find that when a man sticks to his traditional roles as a man, I'm the provider, I cut the grass, I take out the trash, I protect you when somebody breaks into the house. And when a woman sticks to her roles of, I'm speaking in a conservative sense here, of
Sure.
someone, a stay-at-home wife, a stay-at-home mother, a woman that's always in the kitchen, do you find that those marriages tend to have a lower success rate or a higher success rate?
Well, it's hard to say because I only see as a divorce lawyer the relationships that catastrophically fail. The majority of households in the United States are now, multiple working partners. So what you're describing is not the norm anymore. There was a time, obviously, where it was the norm for a man to be in the workforce and a woman to be at home, either as a stay-at-home mother or as a stay-at-home spouse. A sort of a domestic catch-all. Um, then it became that a lot of women worked outside the home, but in a part-time capacity that was supplementary or complementary to the children's schedule. So while the kids were at school, she would be working. And then that changed. Obviously, that shifted in the 1970s most dramatically, and then into the 80s and 90s and into our present day, where the overwhelming majority of households are both parents are working on a full-time basis outside the home. So, um, do I think that that is good for families and the preservation of marriages? I mean, marriage was already doing quite poorly in the 1980s and 1990s. So as that has gone up, meaning the increase of two parent working households, the divorce rate has also gone up. It hasn't kept total pace, but it has gone up slightly. I think the marriage satisfaction rate has gone down quite a bit. The number of people getting married has also gone down during that time period. So I think that was a model that was probably quite compatible to the concept of marriage because you were really looking at your home as an economic unit, as an ecosystem, where it's like one person is in charge of this and they have to do that job, and one person's in charge of this, and they have to do that job. And if any of the wheels on the bus come off, it doesn't matter how nice the other three wheels are, the thing's breaking down, right? So I think the prevalence of divorce made it extremely risky to be the stay-at-home mom who doesn't have her own economic viability. It also made it risky to be the provider, the worker outside the home, because those promises of marriage, I'll support you financially, I'll support our children financially, those are enforceable by the court system when you divorce. But the promise of I'll be nice to you, I'll have sex with you, I'll cook dinner for you, the court system can't enforce that. Like the court can't issue an order, be nice to your husband and have sex with him. A court can't issue that order, but they can issue an order saying continue to pay the carrying charges associated with the former marital residence and the home equity line of credit and the utility bills. So both sides have tremendous risk in that equation. The man, by virtue of the fact that he can be compelled to continue doing things and she can't be in that dynamic. And the woman in the sense that if the man just goes out for milk and never comes back, she can find herself having diminished her lifetime earning capacity in a really significant way. So, sometimes the doctrine of mutually assured destruction is good. It's like the thing that keeps people, they say an armed society is a polite society. But I also think, again, is that why you want to be married? Like if your spouse was like, listen, I don't really want to be married to you, but I don't feel like getting divorced. I wouldn't feel good about that. Like you don't want your partner to stay married to you because they don't feel like getting divorced and they don't want to go through all that. You want your partner to stay married to you because they like being married to you, because you add value to their life and they add value to yours. So I think that should be the goal.
And I believe that to a lot of people, especially if you were subscribing to more modern beliefs around marriages today, if a man came in and said, "You're going to do the things a woman would do, I'm going to do the things a man is going to do," it would be a red flag to a lot of them. Now, red flags are something that Gen Z talks about constantly online. What's a red flag people my age dismiss as normal that you have seen fester and destroy marriages 10, 20, 30 years down the line? Does anything come to mind?
Most of the time when people talk of your generation about red flags, they're throwing up big things. Like they're throwing up things like red flag, she lives in Miami. Red flag, he has two phones. It's like big things.
I mean, Miami is not that great,
That's true. I'm not saying that, stereotypes are a real time saver, buddy. Like you're gonna learn that in life. Like they're all rooted in something. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that they're fair, but they're a time saver. Um, saying New Yorkers are sarcastic and gruff, you're not wrong. Like you're not wrong. I can say it as a New Yorker. But is it to say that everyone is like that? No, that's not fair. What I would say for red flags is a red flag that your generation tends to, I think, miss is how much, like football, romantic relationships are really a game of inches. Like they're really a game of like small incremental things. We fall in love super fast and we fall out of love the way we go bankrupt, which is very slowly and then all at once. And so one of the biggest things I see with young people, and I observe it in the wild all the time, I observe it on the subway, in a restaurant, any place I am, is how much power what I would call micro distractions have. So like you're out with your romantic partner and you just look at your phone real quick. Like it's just that activity, what I just did. We're talking, but while we're talking, I just look down at this and then I look back up. It's that microsecond that basically tells you I'm here, but I'm not fully here. Like I'm not fully here. Like there's a part of me that still wants to see if someone's texting me, seeing what's going on in the world. There's a part of me that's still disconnected. I think your generation has been so tethered to their devices for so long. And I don't blame you all for that, because if like every single thing that's happening was popping up on that, everything I needed to do during the day, from taking a car to some place, to figuring out the best subway route, to figuring out if breaking news is happening, to seeing who was contacting me from work and my personal life, it was all on this one little box in my hand. I don't blame you for constantly looking at that little box in your hand, but it's a huge red flag when someone can't be just genuinely present. And I think that even the minor micro distraction of someone who's constantly looking at their phone, I think that should be a much bigger red flag for people of your day and age. I learned this lesson the hard way. I'll tell you. Anytime I'm talking to a young man, I always like to be a cautionary tale. But I remember it probably took me until my like late 40s to figure out that, and I think women will agree with this in the comments, that, if you gave a choice between, to most women, of I'm going to give you 6 hours of my time where I'm kind of distracted and looking at my phone quite a bit, or I'm going to give you 2 hours of my absolute undivided attention, I'm going to turn my phone off and just give you my undivided attention, almost every woman I know would be like, yeah, give me the 2 hours of your undivided attention. Like it has so much more value. And I think the sooner that we as men learn that, and I think it's probably true for women to their male partners as well, I think it's genuine presence is it's a cultivated skill for your generation, because you guys have had these devices thrown at you from like infancy at this point. I mean, I see kids out in the stroller with their iPad, and it's shocking.
I want to end off with a personal question. I'm hoping you can help me out, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm 22. I'm dating a 21-year-old girl. I love her so much. She's wonderful. At this point in my life, how do I know if she's the one or not? How do I know she's the one I'm going to spend the rest of my life with? What are the signs I should be looking out for?
Yeah. So good news is you don't know, and you won't know, right? It's a bet. It's a bet, and that's okay. There's not going to be a siren. There's not going to be like a halo. There's not going to be like a thing that goes off. It's like ding, 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 Jackson, she's it. Like that's not what's going to happen. And you can't always trust your heart. You can't always trust your gut. You can't always trust your head individually. Maybe together, what does my heart say? What does my gut say? What does my brain say? Maybe you can listen to the chorus that's inside you, and what do you all feel about this person? But what I'll say is, we don't learn how to swim by reading books about swimming. We learn how to swim in the pool, you know? And I think you got to just get in the pool, man. Like you're in the pool. Like you learn how to love by loving. You can't know, you can't learn everything you need to know about yourself from yourself. You need other people, you know? And a romantic relationship, being fully yourself around another person, is about the bravest thing you can do, and it's potentially the most rewarding, and it's one of the most risky things you can do. Because if you share openly with someone all the things you need to share with them for them to know you, your vulnerabilities, what you're afraid of, things you're embarrassed of, parts of yourself you need to work on, they can weaponize that against you. So that's scary. That's really scary. But that's what makes it brave to love. Like if you're not scared, it's not brave. It's only brave if you're scared and you do it anyway. So one of the traits I have always admired and aspired to in being a man was to be brave. Like I always wanted to be a brave man. I wanted to believe that if like someone was in trouble, I would step in, that I would help, that I would be of service, that I would be scared, but I would do what needed doing, right? That's the kind of man I wanted to be. It's the kind of man our world needs. So I hope you're brave enough to be fully yourself with this other person, even though that's scary. I hope you're brave enough to disappoint her sometimes in small ways, because that's how honest you're being with her. You don't tell her what she wants to hear. You tell her the truth and you tell her what she needs to hear from you. Because I think maybe you hopefully see her blind spots and she helps see yours, because you can't see your blind spots. That's why they're blind spots. And part of love is seeing each other's blind spots and being the kind of person that will tell each other what you need to hear rather than what you want to hear all the time, which really very often means you're just lying to a person. And, you know, I really hope that you are brave enough to, you know, be completely yourself with another person. If you want to me, the best gauge of is this the one has always been, do you feel comfortable in your own skin when you're with this person? Like, do you feel like a good version of yourself when you're with this person? And one of the highest compliments I ever got when I was in a relationship was a friend of mine was meeting the girl I was dating for the first time. And I'd been seeing her for several months, and I was waiting to introduce her to friends. And when he spent the evening having dinner with us, afterwards I said, "So what'd you think?" And he said, "You know, I've never seen you so comfortable in your own skin, and you're completely yourself when you're with her." He's like, "You weren't any different than when it's just you and me." Like, and this is one of my buddies. Like, this is a dude I'd been friends with for 20 plus years, and we traveled together. We lived together for a little while after college. And he was like, "Yeah, man, like it was just you. Like you weren't anything different. You were just you." And so I would say that's a big, big, great green flag. If Jackson can be Jackson when he's sitting next to her, and when you feel comfortably the man you want to be when you're with her, if she brings that out in you, that to me, biggest green flag there is.
Jim, you bring such valuable expertise and advice to the table. Thank you so much for joining me today. Guys, I want to let you all know, take a visit to trustedprenup.com. It's an online platform that allows couples to create state-specific prenuptial agreements quickly and affordably. Jim, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a pleasure, Jackson. Great to see you. Best of luck. Talk to you soon.